Welcome back to Horses and Mouth's monthly marketing meeting. I'm Sean Bailey, editor-in-chief, and I'm here with Devin Kropp, associate editor who runs our advisor client program. Devin, how are you?
Good. How are you? Trying to stay cool.
Trying to stay cool. It's 99 here. What's the temperature where you are?
97, but feels like 106. So
Yeah, I don't even want to think about how it feels. But I've still put on my sport coat, and I have to say, the temperature in my closet is not the same as the temperature in the room. You see ducks into the closet. It's like stepping into a sauna just to pull on a sport coat. Anyway, everybody, so in our monthly marketing meetings, we start usually very broadly with some relevant topics to all advisors. And then as we move through our session, we narrow down our focus to some of the things that marketing actions that advisors are taking here at Horse's Mouth through the advisor client program. So Devin, we're starting off today talking about some recent studies and some things about the importance or growing importance of advisors having a good social media presence. What's going on with that?
So we came across this article this past week about, not surprising, but I think just a good reminder to advisors that social media presence is becoming more and more important for finding prospects. This study out of Hartford Funds found that about 50% of investors say that social media impacts the decision they make when they're hiring a financial professional. And so while that's only still half, I think we all know that over the last few years, that number has been growing pretty, exponentially. It used to not really matter at all. And now we're seeing that 50% number. We're seeing about a quarter of, Gen Z, who obviously is probably not anyone's, prospects right now, but will be in a few years, saying that they would not even consider talking to a financial advisor who did not have a social media presence. And the experts who are kind of analyzing the study said that they expect that number to increase in the next few years, especially as Gen Z enters the workforce and starts to make those financial decisions. So I think it's really important that not only do advisors have a social media presence, but they have one that is somewhat good and it isn't just posts with no engagements or likes or comments that you're scheduling that isn't resonating with your audience. So trying to find ways to really make it so that you have a social media presence and it's a place where you're having conversation and getting engagement and connecting with new people on social media.
So you're saying in the long run, TikTok should be on everybody's radar?
I mean, honestly, I think so. I know there's been a lot in the news about bad financial advice on TikTok. And I'm sure compliance, is not caught up to TikTok yet. But I do think, you can learn a lot of stuff on TikTok, and especially if you, know what you're talking about, and you can be a real voice of reason as, Gen Z comes into that workforce and makes financial decisions. It could be a good place for advisors to be. But more importantly, for most advisors listening, I think that focusing on LinkedIn and Facebook are kind of still the two primary places that we want advisors to really be focusing their financial social media efforts.
Right. And of course, the big market most advisors are interested in these days is the retiree market. Probably will be like that, for quite a long while, because that's always where the money will be. But obviously, advisors are smart to diversify their base of clients. And, this is a topic for another day about how to appeal to younger investors so that you can strike up an important relationship with them early on in their career and offer the kind of guidance, not just investments, but really the sort of financial planning, kind of life planning guidance, the financial components. And so social media definitely is something people need to think about. What have we seen, let's say over the last decade? It's more or less been around a decade or so, I guess. Sure, when Facebook started. Sure, it's more than 10 years, but maybe not 15, right? Something like that.
Yeah, probably about 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
So it's not like social media is brand new, but I mean, we never heard of TikTok 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, we were probably saying, well, we never heard of Instagram, never heard of Facebook. And that pre-retiree market is using social media. Where are the platforms? Where do we think people need to put a stake in the ground?
Number one, especially if you're going after that retiree market, is Facebook. We know from, studies that come out that the vast majority of people in those age groups are on Facebook and are active on Facebook. I also think that LinkedIn is another good place for advisors to be, just because we also know that that age demographic is there. And we know that people who have LinkedIn profiles, tend to fit other ideal client profiles that advisors might have, college educated, in the workforce, usually high income earners. So LinkedIn, I think, is another important place to be for advisors. And
so basically, you're planting the stake on two platforms minimums, Facebook and LinkedIn. People trying to be current in the world of the internet, that's at one point in time, being current meant, having a Hotmail web-based account, and then came the next thing, and then came the next thing. And it can be overwhelming for some, but the Facebook and LinkedIn are the key things. What do people need to think about in terms of sort of smart and efficient strategy for having a social media presence that is actually meaningful?
That's a good question. I think, another reason that I like Facebook and LinkedIn for advisors is that posts that you make on those platforms have a much longer shelf life than, say, a Twitter or even an Instagram these days, where if you, don't log on, if you log on once a day, you might be missing, a ton of posts that were made. But I think with Facebook and LinkedIn, if you're creating smart posts that are fostering engagement, those have a longer shelf life. So it's more likely that people are, going to see them. So you don't necessarily need to be posting multiple times a day. You can, post once a day, or even sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. And if those posts are good posts, and we can get into what that means, you could still get a lot of engagement 2 days later on a post that you made. I'd say the biggest kind of problem that I see when I look at advisors' Facebook profiles, business pages, is that it's very obviously canned content that's being posted, whether or not, it's through a third party that they use, or, it's just someone on the team who's going in and posting these, articles, which could be great articles, but the posts have really little context. It's pretty obvious to someone that, they're just these scheduled posts that are going out, and there's no conversation from the advisor kind of explaining what the post is about or their take on it. So that's not to say that you can't use canned content. I mean, there's some really good canned content out there, but I think it's important when you're creating posts, or whoever on your team is creating posts, that they are writing kind of just a little, summary or your take on it, or why it's important, to give the post a little bit of context. So you don't just go to your Facebook page and then see kind of these string of articles that are posted there that nobody's liking, no one's commenting on, because you're not fostering conversation on those posts. You're not asking questions. You're not making it seem like people can have a conversation with you about it. So I'd say, number one, if you're going to use canned posts, try to personalize them in some way. And even if you use a third party and you can't go in and edit the post, comment on it from your business page or your page, and give a little bit of context, because the more that you encourage conversation and engagement on those posts, the more that other people are going to engage with the post as well. Number one, because they feel comfortable doing it. Number two, Facebook bases its newsfeed on engagement. It used to be a chronological order. Now they've changed their algorithm. So they will put an older post on top of someone's newsfeed if it's getting a lot of likes and comments on it. So you really want to encourage that, whether that means you ask a question to your, followers on it, or you do something a little bit more personal, have a photo of your team, or, you tell a story about yourself, you use a video. All of that is going to help you create a post that is going to get a little bit more likes or comments on it, and therefore be more beneficial to your marketing strategy than just that canned article from your broker dealer.
Yeah, right. And now I know that there are some people who are in certain organizations where compliance is tied to their hands to some degree. They're still allowed to post, but they're not allowed to comment. And hopefully that's going away. And I know there are plenty that do have the ability to comment. Uh, should the advisor be asking people on his team to get in there and make a comment to kind of get sort of kick things off from a conversation perspective? Does that sort of thing make sense?
I think that can definitely work. I mean, obviously your followers might know that it's someone on your team, but I think if they are, sincere about it and it's not a comment that just seems like you told them to go in and make it and actually adds to the conversation, I think that's actually a great idea, because usually when you see a post and if you want to comment on it but nobody else has, maybe you hesitate a little bit. But if there's already that comment there, the conversation's going, I think people are a lot more likely to do that. So yeah, I think that's actually a really good idea, especially for people who might be starting out and trying to build that presence and build that engagement, is to have someone on your team or someone in your family kind of just comment on it and get that going.
Yeah, and it seems like if you're subscribing to a can post service, that's going to have a lot of retirement related content in it, presumably, and you can make your own comments, attach them to the post. You really should not pass up the opportunity to do that, because it's there for you to be the sort of one sentence expert, one sentence statement that positions the article on a Roth IRA or opening a 529 or top places to live in retirement with low taxes or whatever the types of articles are. The advisor should look for the chance to just share a little wisdom there as another way to make it seem like, well, to make it more personal, to make it actually social, right?
Right.
Yeah. And what do you think is the framework? What's a good framework for, I know over the years, like, for instance, I was heavily into Facebook almost from the beginning. And then when Twitter came along, I already knew there was no way I could jump on Twitter, because I would never get any work done, and I'd be just twice as aggravated by the end of the day. I had to limit it to Facebook. But what is from a business perspective, what is a sort of framework that we could offer advisors to use to be sort of smart and efficient about social media?
Yeah, I don't think you need to spend a ton of time on social media from a business perspective to have an impact. I think if you can set aside 10 to 15 minutes a day where either you're posting your own content, but you're also interacting with other content on Facebook or LinkedIn in a business way, that can be hugely impactful. I think a lot of times when we think about social media, especially from a marketing standpoint, we think about, okay, what are we going to post? What are we going to do on our profiles? And we forget that there's a whole nother side of social media where you're supposed to be social with other people and other accounts. And so I think in addition to, posting your own content, and of course, I know with compliance, maybe this is a challenge for some, but going on, Facebook or LinkedIn and spending some time either, posting on, other people's posts, commenting on it, liking it. Both Facebook and LinkedIn are really big into groups now. LinkedIn has been really big on groups for a while, and now Facebook in the past year or so has really started promoting groups on its platform too, where you can join different groups for different interests, and you could be posting there or commenting there. And specifically on Facebook, they've kind of changed their algorithm, so they're really if you're in groups, those are the first posts you're going to see when you sign in. They're really heavily promoting people to join that. And so I think if you spend, 15 minutes a day kind of going through there and making connections, liking and commenting, joining groups, participating in conversations, that can make a pretty big impact on, where you are right now on social media and where you might want to be. You don't have to be spending, hours a day on it. It can just be 15 minutes where you're creating your content and then, interacting with other content.
Right. Yeah, the private group or the groups, they're not all private, right? Sometimes like public open groups as well. I do recall an advisor who has since passed away, but his name was Bob Hardees, and he was from Michigan. And I remember he was telling me that he ran a little Facebook page. It was like a history page for his community. And everybody's always interested in, seeing old photos from the town they grew up in or the town they live in now or whatever the case may be. And I guess he kind of curated that. And I remember him mentioning, there was never anything about his business, except I think once a year he might have put out a link to that group when he was having his like annual barbecue or something like that. And of course, everybody knew him from this history page that he created, and these people followed, and he was posting to on a regular basis. And so people come to his financial planning firm's annual barbecue, and I think it kind of helped his business. So I mean, there are ways to be creative as well. I think the other thing, you and I were talking about this recently, another platform, regarding this whole thing of liking, right? And I was saying how my philosophy of liking is something I picked up from somebody in the early days of Facebook. He was kind of like Facebook guru or whatever. And his point was like, all right, so you're on the Facebook feed and your friends post something and it's there. And you like it because it's a way of sort of connecting with them and acknowledging them. It's like if you're walking down the street, or if you're in high school and you're walking down the hallway and you saw a friend, you say, hey, right? Just, hey, acknowledging that they're there. And so the liking is kind of a similar thing. And so getting on your client's page, looking at your client's Facebook feed and looking at their graduation pictures or their vacation pictures, or, practically anything except for crazy political rants, it's worth going in there and at a minimum liking it, and sometimes, making a comment or whatever. So I think that, what are your thoughts in terms of other platforms like YouTube or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think
YouTube really social media?
So that's interesting because during our last monthly marketing meeting, we did talk about YouTube because it came in first and most popular social media platform from the Pew social media research survey that comes out every year. And I think that, and I do this too, I kind of put it in a separate category than social media. Because when I think about social media, I think about Facebook and Twitter. But it is a form, of social media where you're putting content out there and people can consume it and they can interact with you. So it definitely is. And I think that again is another great place for advisors to be. But, there's obviously different actions you need to take on YouTube compared to, the standard Facebook and LinkedIn. But videos do great on Facebook and LinkedIn too. So if you're doing YouTube videos, cross-sharing those to your other social media platforms, you should absolutely do, because the algorithm just loves any sort of video. So if you're already on YouTube, make sure you're using that content in other places. And if you're not on YouTube, that's another really great platform to be on. We know that people go there looking for particular information, and advisors can do really well on that platform.
Right. Good. All right. So that brings us to the second part of our monthly marketing meeting, where we're actually going to dig down into some specific actions that advisors who are members of our advisor client program are going to be planning for over really the next, 4 to 8 weeks. So what do we have happening in July, Daphne?
So July is the theme for July is caregiving. I think we kind of talked about this last month, but it is a really hot topic right now. I think that people, having gone through the pandemic, are more ready to have the conversation about who's going to take care of me if something goes wrong. What are my plans for that? And so I think caregiving is a really timely topic right now. And so for advisor client members, we do have an article reprint set up to be kind of the monthly communication piece that goes out. It's all about financial tips to make caregiving easier. And in addition to that one that we suggest, there's also, I think, probably 8 to 10 other articles on the topic in the advisor client library that you can use. And so we typically heavily recommend one article reprint a month. But I think for most advisors, creating a mini drip campaign on any of these topics to send out, one piece a week during that month can also be a nice strategy. So if you're interested in sending out more, I definitely would take a look at the article reprint library in the caregiving section, because there's some really useful pieces there that can kind of help get the conversation going, either with your clients or their children, or everyone, bringing everyone in for a meeting. There's a lot of reprints that are designed to get the generations kind of talking and opening that dialogue on the topic.
Yeah, caregiving, a lot of these topics I like to touch bases just for a second with what the core problem is. And, with this one on caregiving, this isn't long-term caregiving, or it's kind of it's not about long-term care insurance or long-term care planning per se. It's more the sort of nittier grittier stuff about, hey, do your loved ones have, durable power of attorney or, healthcare proxy? Do they have the wills? Do they have the other directives? And that the problem that these presentations seek to solve is really the situation of trying to make, an unhappy, inevitable moment in the future of every family a lot less awful than it could be if it goes unplanned. Meaning, somebody in your family who's suddenly in an extreme medical situation or a death, and no one has ever looked to see who's on the will or what the durable power of attorney is, or how mom and dad or whomever it is planned for having themselves taken care of in the late stages of their lives. And the main thrust of the presentation is, look, this stuff is going to happen, and we have seen, as professional financial advisors, and you've all seen situations where there wasn't planning, and it just literally adding insult to injury in a way. And going through some modest planning around these topics can make things a lot smoother when the difficult times come. So it's not completely an uplifting topic, but it is one that is critical. And as you were saying, Devin, it's one that people are more open to hearing and acting on now than they were before the pandemic, unfortunately. But I think that's a good thing overall. Okay, so that's the July theme, which we started talking about last month, because we always look in sort of eight-week increments. What do we got for August?
August is all about college planning, right? People are getting ready to go back to school. During, I think, the end of June, new numbers are released for a student loan perspective. So we have, new things to be talking about with clients. So August is all about college planning. Again, we have a reprint set up that's all about evaluating financial aid letters. I think this article was really interesting because it goes into detail on how every school kind of sends you a different financial aid letter. And a lot of times the language that they use is not the same as other schools. And so quite often loans are disguised with other words where you might not know that that's money you have to pay back. And this reprint is really helpful because it lets clients and prospects know that this is a problem that exists and what they should be looking out for in a financial aid letter. Again, in addition, we have so many other article reprints on the topic that can be sent out if you want to do one a week. And then we also have a quick reference card on key college funding data. And this is, I think, a really helpful card to be sending out to parents of, high schoolers or even middle schoolers. That gives them a good primer on, what to expect from the college planning process and different actions that should be taken in, different years of their child's high school career. All of our stuff is kind of about late stage college planning. So it's, kids who are in middle school or high school right now, what they need to be doing, defining certain terms, giving them key numbers. So that's something that you can personalize and download. And I think that's a really great piece to be sending out when people are kind of getting into that back to school mindset. Even parents who have kids in college currently, it has kind of important data regarding the FAFSA that needs to be filled out each year. So it can be, sent out to them or grandparents, all of that. I think it's a really nice two-sided personalized piece that can be sent out. And we also have it set up for advisor client members as a client action webinar. So if you do want to, present to your clients on college planning, but, don't want to go into a full-blown presentation, this is a quick 20, 30 minute kind of overview of key actions that they might want to be thinking about depending on what year their child is. And also just kind of giving a good overview of late stage college planning and, terms they should know, numbers that they should know. And you can send them the card so they can follow along. And it's a kind of a great educational value add, I think, for a lot of advisors to be doing in the back to school timeframe.
Yeah. And I think the 4 ways to evaluate a financial aid letter, I think that's information that any advisor could read that and needs to be familiar with it because it's helpful. And parents, I know when I first got into this topic a few years ago through Lynn O'Shaughnessy, I was absolutely shocked that someone, Lynn has written about a study that was done. And I think there were like 300 different terms that schools were using to describe aid and loans in their financial aid letters. And as you were saying, it can be very, well, frankly, I think it can be deceptive. And I think we might even see some, federal legislation on this at some point, because it is crazy that any family would, read a letter from the college and think their kid is getting a grant when in fact what they're doing is signing paperwork to be on the hook for a loan. And so that is something that's a great topic that an advisor can absorb and become, technically proficient in this small area. And your clients, especially the ones who have kids that are starting to think about college, will really appreciate the knowledge. Same thing with the roadmap, the college roadmap, the handout that you were talking about, the key college funding data card, lays out all the steps that families need to be thinking about. So those are two topics that I think are very valuable for both your clients, but also for your own professional development knowledge. So additionally, what can we say? If you want to present on this topic and you're a master member, you can go into the Savvy College Planning portion of your master membership program and download the presentations and learn this material. And really, the time that people start presenting it is in as early as August, and it's big: August, September, October. The parents of seniors are desperate for this kind of information. You really want to start putting it in front of your clients, when their kids start to be freshmen and sophomores, so that they're totally ahead of the curve and informed on all this stuff. So, okay. Anything else for this month, Devin?
I think that's it.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much. Keep in touch, and we'll be back next month. Stay cool.